On my 6th anniversary with Simon's song. His first love got divorced. When they rekindled their old flame, I found out I was pregnant. Before leaving, I had many things to do. I wanted him to remember that it took him 6 years to warm my heart. I wanted him to imagine that he could have had a happy family. On our 6th anniversary, Simon's first love, Miranda, came back. Back when the song family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Miranda had dumped him immediately and climbed into someone else's bed. I never expected her to have the audacity to return, bringing along a child and begging Simon to give them shelter. I watched as Simon took off the silver ring he had never removed and tossed it into the garbage bin of the dining cart. If you fish it out, I'll help you. Miranda stared at that bin full of greasy, warm leftovers and suddenly burst into tears. Simon held my hand and didn't look back. Let's go home. I thought that after that day, whether it was love or hate, Simon had already let go. That is, until I found that silver ring in his wallet. A few days later, Simon came home drunk, supported by his secretary. Sister, he's had a lot of social events lately. Please don't blame him. I nodded understandingly. I've been busy with art planning coordination lately. Once that's done, I'll be back at work. Thank you for your hard work. Hearing this, Simon, who had been leaning on me, suddenly sobered up a little. He looked at me cautiously. Sure way. I let Miranda work at the company as a janitor. I froze for a moment, then smiled. I trust you. We had been together for 6 years. 6 years of love and trust shouldn't be shattered by a single meeting. Seeing that I remained calm, Simon, who had rehearsed his words, found himself unable to continue. She's a gold digger and a vicious woman. Completely different from you. Sure way. You're gentle and generous. My Simon is so outstanding. Now she must regret everything. I smiled and stroked the side of his face. The bedroom lights were dim. He ruffled my hair just like he did when we were in love. And as he unbuttoned his shirt with one hand, there was a hint of intimacy. But I still feel like something's missing. We don't have a child yet. A year ago, we went to the doctor, and he said everything was fine. We should just let things happen naturally. I gently pushed Simon away. I haven't been feeling well lately. My period was late, and my stomach had been hurting a little. Go to the hospital for a checkup, he said, embracing me gently. It's time for us to have a child. For some reason, when he mentioned a child, something stirred inside me. Yes, I should go see a doctor. Simon didn't lie to me. Miranda really was working as a janitor. She wore a black cleaning uniform, clumsily sorting the trash. Even with a mask on, I could tell she had makeup on and was wearing perfume. When she saw me, Miranda froze. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, finally landing on the diamond ring on my ring finger. She stared at it for a long time, unwilling to look away. Director's song will be here for the meeting soon. Hurry up and clean, Anne urged her. But upon hearing Simon was coming, she suddenly knelt in front of me and began scrubbing the floor. I'm sorry, Miss Laura. I'll clean it right away. Please don't be angry. Submissive. Pitiful. As if I were the one making things difficult for her. But Simon saw it, his brows furrowed slightly. Why are you suddenly scrubbing the floor on your knees? Weren't you half-heartedly mopping just now? Anne sneered, trying to make it look like Sister Laura is bullying you. Simon was displeased and cut Anne off. That's enough. During the meeting, Simon was noticeably distracted. Several times when I brought up the art project, he was lost in thought. His gaze kept drifting toward the door. Midway through, he excused himself to take a call. The room was so quiet that we could hear Miranda sobbing outside. Through her tears, she said she had left back then because she felt insecure, because she had been too scared. She said her family had been drowning in debt, and she had cried herself to sleep every night. She said she had only envied me that I could stand by Simon's side openly, as his supportive wife. Outside, Simon was silent for a long time, before speaking in a hoarse voice. If you hadn't left when we were 19, the place beside me would have been yours. Everyone looked at me. Well, since Director Song isn't here, Let's continue. Shall we? I turned to An. You're his secretary, you should know his proposal well. I rejected Simon's plan and dismissed the art company he had intended to work with. Simon didn't object, or perhaps he had never cared about the art project in the first place. Once the deal was finalized, I left on a business trip for a week to oversee the project. When I returned, Miranda had a desk right next to Simon's. Not as a janitor, but as Simon's assistant. She wore a coat in the same color scheme as mine, a mini skirt, and high heels. Her hair was meticulously styled compared to the pitiful mess she had been outside the restaurant. She looked like a completely different person. When she saw me, her hand trembled as she applied lipstick, and she hurriedly stood up and bowed. Miss Laura. Director Song is just pitying me, there's nothing else. I ignored her. I pushed open Simon's office door. He was already waiting for me. Before I could say anything, Simon pulled down the blinds, sealing us off from her. I just wanted her to see me now, to know that I'm not that broke kid anymore. Simon cautiously pulled me into his arms. I have no other intentions. I swear. I stayed silent. The words I wanted to say to fire Miranda got stuck in my throat. I didn't know what to say. I had considered the possibility that Simon still had lingering feelings for her, but I had no solid proof. I didn't want to be the jealous wife who made a scene over something as trivial as a lingering scent of tea. Simon wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hand holding mine. The silver ring dug into my palm, it hurt. That day, Miranda's child came to the office. He rummaged through the receptionist's drawers, threw a tantrum about wanting water, and then spat it all over the planner's computer. Miranda tried to stop him, but after a couple of weak attempts, the child started crying, throwing himself on the floor, wailing. I instructed my assistant, tell Miranda not to bring her child to the office during working hours. It disrupts others. If the planner has to work overtime, the bonus will come out of her performance salary. Miranda froze, then lowered her head and started crying. The boy, who was already 8 years old, saw his mother crying, grabbed a cup, and hurled it at me. I couldn't dodge in time. My wrist turned black and blue on impact. He kept screaming, "Bitch. If you hadn't been a homewrecker, Dad wouldn't have left Mom." The office was in chaos. Simon rushed over. The first person he looked at was Miranda kneeling on the ground, shielding the boy. Then, finally, he looked at me. "Dad." The boy ran straight into Simon's arms, then turned and made a face at me. Whispers spread around the office. Simon looked incredibly uncomfortable. "Is he your son?" I asked coldly. "Of course not." But when I asked, his first instinct was to glance at the boy. Only after confirming that the child bore no resemblance to him did he rush to deny it. "The kid's just confused. His dad has been gone for a long time. He probably just finds Director Song familiar." Miranda's eyes reddened again. "I'm sorry, Miss Laura. Please don't take it to heart, he's just a child." "Laura, let's go treat your injury first." Simon looked at my bruised wrist, his eyes full of concern. Miranda hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth and raised her hand to slap the boy. "How dare you upset Miss Laura?" Simon stopped her. "Don't hit him." The three of them looked like a strict mother and a caring father with their child. And I was the heartless villain. Simon placed an ice pack on my wrist. I lowered my head and watched him. The concern in his eyes was real. The urgency in his actions was real. But so was the way he had instinctively protected Miranda and her son. After all these years, was it love or unresolved feelings? "Simon, do you even know?" "Laura, don't blame them. Miranda has it tough. Raising a child alone isn't easy. The kid is a little stubborn, but he's not a bad boy." I cut him off. "Is it my fault that their life is hard? If he's shy around strangers, then why did he run straight into your arms? How far have things gone between you two, whether I know about it or not?" Simon finally realized he had said the wrong thing. "Simon, can I still trust you?" He froze at my question. This ring, was it a gift from her back then? "Don't lie to me." Simon didn't know I met Miranda long before he did. Back then, my parents' divorce was because of Miranda's family. Miranda and I came from the same hometown and even attended the same high school. Her parents made a small fortune in the clothing business. Later, they claimed they were getting into finance, going door to door, persuading people to invest. If you put in $100,000, you'd get $5,000 in interest every month. My parents put in all their savings, borrowed more money, and handed over a total of $300,000. They lost everything. The police called it illegal fundraising, a Ponzi scheme. Miranda's father disappeared with the money, leaving only Miranda and her mother behind. Her mother just cried, refusing to mention repaying the money. That was his debt. What does it have to do with a widow and her child? Miranda's family insisted they had no money left. Yet, throughout high school, Miranda's mother still frequented beauty salons. And Miranda always had the latest phone. They had scammed plenty of people. Even when Miranda went to college, rumors of her family being frauds followed her. During freshman year, Simon was still an arrogant rich second-generation kid, showing up to campus in a different luxury car every day to pursue Miranda. He even got into a fight over her. It became a big deal. Even after their breakup, Simon still believed Miranda was innocent and pure. But then the Song family's finances collapsed. Payments from above were delayed. Money from below had to be settled immediately. Simon's family went bankrupt. His parents jumped off a building. That day, it snowed heavily. 19-year-old Simon knelt before her, crying, begging her to wait for him. He said that with his family destroyed, she was the only reason he kept going. He promised he wouldn't let her suffer, he just asked her to wait. Miranda clung to her new boyfriend's arm and didn't even spare Simon a glance. Their love and breakup were dramatic, known to everyone. So when I first saw Simon, I found it hard to connect the legendary spoiled rich boy with the food delivery guy who leaned over and called out, "Uber Eats order 78. Is it ready?" I nodded and handed him the packaged barbecue. For half a year, that was the extent of our interaction. Until the night a group of drunk men surrounded me, asking for my number, touching me. I stood there frozen, too scared to move, too scared to cry. Simon cursed, took off his jacket, and threw himself at them. How could he have one? His left arm was dislocated, and he had bruises all over. As long as I didn't have to pay them off. It's fine. Your counselor is actually pretty decent. Watching him try to act cool. I don't know why, but tears started falling. Hey, don't cry. It doesn't hurt, it really doesn't. If you don't believe me, punch me. Panicked. He grabbed my hand and made me punch him. But the wound really did hurt. He winced in pain, baring his teeth. And I ended up laughing. Seeing me laugh. He laughed too. That's better. You look way prettier when you smile. The counselor de-escalated the situation and got me a part-time job at the library. Simon and I became friends. Afraid those men would come after me, he walked me to my dorm every night, even though the library was less than 100 meters away from my dorm. We weren't at the same school, but he did this for 2 years. During those 2 years, Simon confessed to me 4 times. I liked Simon, I knew that. But my parents' divorce and the debts they left behind weighed on my mind. Simon, however, was persistent. Even after being rejected, he just scratched his head and said, "Well, I'll think of another way." Even after losing everything, Simon never lost that bold, passionate nature. Meanwhile, I was reserved. Even if my heart was a garden, blooming with 10,000 roses for him, I wouldn't easily let him pick one. It took him 2 years to melt my frozen heart. During our freshman year, Simon invested in a game development startup with his dorm mates. Later, he made his own game and pulled me in to play it. The game Simon developed was simple. A tiny character roamed around, collecting items as keys to unlock different levels. The character used dandelions as parachutes and fireflies as candlelight for its adventures. It was simple but fun. What was strange was that, despite being genderless, the character had a zodiac sign. It was a Virgo. I asked Simon why. He only smiled and said, "You have to reach the final level. And then I'll tell you." The last level was a barren floating island, guarded by a creature called the Beast of Time. Attacking it didn't lower its health. It wouldn't accept coins. Even the keys couldn't unlock the door. I couldn't pass the final level. No matter what I tried. The day before graduation, Simon asked me if I had completed the game. I told him it was too hard. I had tried everything. But the monster wouldn't let me through. Simon told me to give the beast of time a seed of a rose. So I did. And I watched as the barren island became covered in blooming roses. I cleared the game. The next day was graduation. Simon asked to meet and say goodbye. We walked around the track twice when suddenly a heavy downpour started. We ran, drenched, to the library entrance to take cover. The rain poured like a waterfall. Thunder rumbled. Yet Simon's voice was crystal clear. He looked at me seriously and said, "All these years, you've rejected me 4 times. The first time, you said our zodiac signs weren't compatible. The second time, you said you didn't like men. The character in the game is me, genderless. A Virgo. Perfectly matched with Lara the Taurus. The fourth time, you said you were afraid that even if we got together, we'd eventually break up. I know about your family situation. I know you don't feel secure. But I mean it, I will make money and marry you. We will have a happy family. I will take care of you for a lifetime. But today, the weather is terrible. I know you're going to reject me again." He looked disappointed. Because the third time I had rejected him. I said it was because the sky was overcast and my mood was bad. And today, there was a storm, awful weather. All these years, I haven't learned much. But I do understand this life is like a raging river. If we don't hold on to each other, we'll be swept apart in the crowd. I'm giving you ex.W. This game. Take care of yourself. We probably won't see each other again. Well, that's it then. I still have to pack. Simon didn't dare look at me. He thought I would reject him again. But I held his hand. Then let's walk together. Shall we? His eyes changed from disbelief to pure joy. After graduation, we went our separate ways. Simon started a game studio and named it ex.W. A beginning from nothing. Simon Lara. Like his promise. To secure investments. We spent 4 hours on the subway every day. When we were broke, we only ate boiled noodles with vegetables. Instant ramen was a luxury. We couldn't afford a booth at game conventions. Nor did we have money for ads. In the sweltering heat of 40 degrees, we stood outside convention halls, handing out flyers. The year ex.W hit 10 million in revenue. Amid the cheers of our studio's celebration, Simon dropped to one knee. He slipped a 3-carat ring onto my finger. "Lara, I know what betrayal feels like. So I will never fail you. I will give you a home and never let you be sad. Our 6 years together were not something I could just let go of easily." Simon fired Miranda and threw away the ring she had given him. Everything seemed to return to normal. Except for the bruise on my wrist. Maybe it was the cold weather. But it just wouldn't heal. We had an unspoken agreement not to mention her. But that same silence made it feel like she was everywhere. We never spoke her name. Yet before every sentence left my lips, it felt like I had to think of her first. On Christmas, Simon booked a high-end restaurant. I originally planned for us to come here on your birthday. He skillfully cut a piece of steak for me. Simon's phone lit up with a WeChat message. Instinctively, he glanced at me first, before lowering his head to reply, an unconscious smile forming on his lips. When he noticed me watching him, he quickly wiped the smile off his face and told me it was a client. I nodded, resting my chin on my hand as I gazed at him. Then out the window. After all these years, his face had hardly changed. If anything, time had only sharpened his features, making them more mature. I thought my wrist had healed. But when I picked up my fork, a dull pain still lingered. Outside, a young couple peeked into the restaurant. But the place was expensive. The boy wanted to impress his girl. But she gently tugged his sleeve and shook her head. They shared a warm serving of tteokbokki, huddling together in the cold, smiling at each other. For some reason, I envied them. Simon finally put his phone down. "Let's go home. I'm full." He kept me on the inner side of the sidewalk, held my hand, and tucked it into his pocket. These days, Simon had been treating me like we were back in our honeymoon phase. We went on dates, took walks, watched movies, and fell asleep in each other's arms. But lately, I had been feeling heavy, restless in my sleep. Simon kissed my forehead lightly and turned off the projector. The phone under his pillow kept lighting up with new messages. He called my name softly. I pretended to be asleep and didn't answer. He carefully turned over, reached for his phone, and walked out to the balcony to take the call. Maybe he wasn't talking to Miranda. But I couldn't bring myself to trust him anymore. After he left, I sat up in the darkness and thought for a long time. I had tried to figure out how to fix this relationship, but I couldn't forget the way Simon had reddened eyes when I asked if the ring was from her and how he nodded. The ring was gone, but the faint mark it left on his finger was still there, glaringly obvious. I had even wondered if I was making a big deal out of nothing. After all, he hadn't physically cheated. Maybe he wasn't even meeting her. Now maybe it really was just work. But I didn't want to be the kind of woman who overanalyzed every little thing, who obsessed over every gust of wind, who tore her hair out fighting a pretentious coquette for a man's attention. Love that is uncertain is no longer love. He could have made a clean break the first time he saw her. He could have kept his distance. Instead, he took advantage of my trust, inching closer and closer. A cold draft slipped through the window, chilling the warmth Simon had spent 6 years building in my heart. Even after weighing all the pros and cons, I still couldn't help feeling sad. I didn't want to cry, but my tears wouldn't listen. All these years, and I still hadn't found a home to call my own. Our 6 years together plain and ordinary, like a glass of water. Days spent leaning on each other for warmth now seemed dull in comparison to the fiery, unforgettable passion he had shared with Miranda. I couldn't even recall anything extraordinary about us, nothing that proved fate had destined us to be together. We had simply met, fallen in love, and were now drifting apart. But he and her, they were a lover's reunited story, a redemption arc, a young love that could never be forgotten, the kind that haunts someone for a lifetime. My pregnancy interrupted my plan to confront Simon and ask for a divorce. The two bold lines on the pregnancy test left me at a loss. If it weren't for Simon, I wouldn't have wanted a child. I was afraid of pain, afraid of death, and afraid of failing to raise a child properly. Simon, despite his family's downfall, had still grown up with the love of his parents. Unlike me, after my family lost money, my parents constantly fought. I was nothing more than an obstacle in their pursuit of a better life, kicked back and forth between them until I stumbled into adulthood. I had always thought that having just each other was enough for a family. But Simon had long imagined himself as a father. When we renovated our home, he made sure to reserve a nursery. Since we didn't know if it would be a boy or a girl, he painted the walls a soft green. I thought the Lego wall was too expensive, so he begged me to replace it with a chalkboard instead. He also built a row of bookshelves, excitedly pointing at the empty space. The bottom shelf will have picture books. The next level will have storybooks. And once our kid grows this tall, it'll be time for 5 years of college entrance exams, 3 years of simulations. I laughed at him. He never liked studying. Yet he was already imagining his child as a top student. But he said it so often that somehow, even I started to look forward to it. I sat in that empty nursery, thinking for a long time. I thought about my divorced parents. After the split, they had fought tooth and nail to take everything from each other. Everything except me. Simon had been waiting for this child for 6 years. But he wasn't ready to be a father. He was still that 19-year-old boy, kneeling in front of Miranda. I decided to give him a chance. I'm pregnant. I placed the test results in front of Simon. 1 month. Simon froze. Then excitedly helped me sit down. Don't stand. Don't work. This afternoon, I'll have the driver take you home so you can rest. I leaned against Simon and playfully asked him to spend more time with me. It was almost snowing in City A. We had met and fallen in love. There I wanted to go back and see it again. Simon, eager to make me happy, took a 2-week leave. That afternoon, He impatiently dragged me to the mall. Maternity clothes. Strollers. Picture books. Flashcards. The sales assistants. Sensing Simon's joy at becoming a father. Spared no effort in recommending baby products. Holding up both pink and blue baby outfits. Simon grinned. Which one do you like? I stood quietly beside him. Smiling. We don't even know if it's a boy or a girl. And you're already buying pink. Boys can wear pink too. Simon said. Sounding like a child himself. And ended up buying both. When we got home, he held up the maternity dress against me. It was girlish white. With a baby doll cut and ruffled hem. It looks just like the dresses you wore when we first fell in love. You'd smile at me like that. And I'd feel like giving you my whole heart. Simon laughed as he reminisced. I sat on the couch. Hugging a pillow. Tilting my head as I watched him rush around. He was so meticulous that he even replaced my slippers with anti-slip ones. Kneeling on the floor to help me change into them. On one knee just like when he proposed to me. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Illuminating the floating dust in the air. Shimmering gold. He moved back and forth. Filling the once empty nursery piece by piece. Children's things were so delicate. So tiny. A star-shaped mobile hung above the crib. Chiming softly when the wind blew. The picture books were neatly arranged by age. Vibrant and colorful. Every cabinet was lined with corner protectors. Our home, once a sleek Nordic minimalist space, had suddenly transformed into a children's playground. I was surprised by his attention to detail. But Simon, his eyes red, said, ever since my parents died, I've been waiting for a real home. I've been waiting for 8 years. Simon stayed by my side, barely looking at his phone. He wanted to accompany me to my prenatal checkup. But I told him I had just gone last time. And with the flu going around, it was better to avoid the hospital. I still couldn't sleep well. When I got up in the middle of the night, I saw Simon on the balcony, talking on the phone, running his hand through his hair in frustration. I could hear the familiar sound of sobbing on the other end, along with a little boy's tantrum. I quietly watched him. Simon froze, then quickly hung up the phone. Why are you standing there? Are you cold? No. I just had a nightmare and woke up. I wanted some water. Aren't you going to ask who I was talking to? Simon hesitated before speaking. I trust you. I reached out and touched his face. Under the faint moonlight, I could see the guilt in his eyes. So, he was capable of feeling guilty. He pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my neck. His voice hoarse. Lara. I promise I will never fail you again. Snow fell in a city. He had probably deleted Miranda's number. He held my hand tightly the whole way, not checking his phone even once. The fresh snow was soft, crunching under our steps. Underneath my winter coat, I wore the white dress Simon liked. The heavy snowfall made everyone a little childlike. Every time my snow boots left an imprint, I turned back and smiled at him. Seeing me happy, Simon smiled too. The university town's food street had been rebuilt. The old barbecue stand, where I had worked, was long gone. Still, I found the spot from memory. It was now a phone repair shop. When you stood up for me back then, did you ever think about the consequences? Of course I did. Simon ruffled my hair. But you looked so terrified. Yet still refused to cry or ask for help. So stubborn. Even though you were tough. I was moved instantly. But I never thought that such a stubborn girl would one day become my wife. Simon laughed as we reminisced. Do you remember? I chased you for 2 whole years. The first time you rejected me, you said our zodiac signs weren't compatible. The second time, you said you didn't like men. The third time, you said the weather was bad. He was willing to bring up the past. So I smiled and listened. And the last time, just before graduation, I told you I would buy Impresa W and give it to you. I told you to take care of yourself. Because once we parted, we might never see each other again. Then you grabbed my sleeve. Your eyes red. Saying nothing. I still remember that moment. That fourth time. How exactly did you reject me? I looked at him, as if foreseeing an inevitable ending. Simon. Even if we get together, we'll still end up apart. He froze. Fear flashing in his eyes. He quickly stopped me. No. We won't. We won't be apart. We stayed at a small inn in the university town. Like a couple madly in love. During the day, we shared cheap, steaming street food, arguing over who would get the last piece of fried chicken. At night, we walked around the same track where we once had dates. The evening breeze couldn't cool the warmth on our faces. With every familiar sight, he slowly remembered how we met, how we fell in love. Simon, reminiscing, was both excited and youthful again. He overlapped with the 19-year-old Simon from my memories. So he had remembered all the times he had loved me. Then when exactly did he let go of my hand? If our love at first sight, our salvation, our years of mutual support, were as precious as he claimed, then why did it lose to a betrayal that cut to the bone? That night, the snow fell even harder. The streets were freezing, and people hurried along under the street lamp. I told Simon to close his eyes. I looked closely at his face after 6 years. He had barely changed. He was still the man I loved. It felt like these 6 years had been nothing more than a nap in the afternoon sun. As if, in the next moment, he'd lean out from a restaurant window, rushing me to pack his takeout order faster. Snowflakes settled on our brows and lashes, as if we were growing old, together beneath the falling snow. He really made it hard for me to let go. But luckily, I knew myself. I knew I might waver. So before I told him about the baby, I had already gotten rid of it. I wasn't brave enough. I had considered giving him another chance. I checked Simon's phone, his driving records. As long as that night had nothing to do with Miranda, I would forgive him. But that night, at midnight, Miranda's child had a fever, and Simon had taken him to the emergency room. He was still the same 19-year-old Simon, but I could no longer wait for him to grow up. In the endless snowfall, I handed him the divorce papers and the engagement ring. Simon, let's get a divorce. The lawyer had divided our assets clearly. Simon didn't own shares in Empresa W. He had only been earning an executive salary. The house we lived in was one he had saved up for and bought with a loan. I didn't want to fight over it. In the end, Simon was left with nothing. The only problem was he didn't want to divorce. Seeing the divorce papers, his eyes turned red in an instant. He trembled as he read them twice, unable to believe it. Everything was fine. Why are you doing this? Was it really fine? I looked at him calmly. Miranda. Is it because of Miranda? Simon suddenly realized. I have nothing to do with her. Seeing my silence, Simon panicked. I already deleted her. I swear we won't have any contact again. That child isn't mine, I swear. Simon. None of that matters. Then what does? Why are you doing this? He clutched my arm, pleading. These past few days. Weren't we happy? Weren't we doing well? I cut him off. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll get rid of the baby. His eyes widened in shock. Then he dropped to his knees, gripping the hem of my dress. Laura. I swear I never betrayed you. At first, I wanted revenge. But then I softened. A child shouldn't grow up without a father. Our future is just beginning. Too late. It was already too late. I gently pulled my clothes from his grasp. Simon. Separating with dignity is better for the child. He stared at me blankly, searching my eyes for any hesitation. I saw my reflection in his gaze. No hesitation. No regret. Not even hate. Only indifference. For a whole month, Simon didn't go to the office. Even and couldn't reach him several times. He shut himself in his room. Today, when I came home, he ran toward me in excitement, only to realize I was here to move out. Simon stood there, watching the movers slowly dismantle the home we had built together over 6 years. The couple's mugs we had bought them at an amusement park. The tiny fridge magnet made of soft clay. A souvenir from our trip to Lijiang. It was so poorly crafted that it barely resembled us. A pink crystal globe inside. An island covered in blooming roses. I didn't want anything that reminded me of him. There's nothing in the nursery to take. No need to check. These just get rid of them. Thank you. Simon had lost weight. His face haggard. He watched as I packed our memories into boxes. his eyes full of desperate hope. You're keeping them to take with you. To make it easier to throw them away. Don't throw them away. Let me keep them. I didn't argue. Simon's face twisted with bitterness. Yet he still clung to the hope that I cared. You and the baby be well. I'll win you back. Okay. The baby is gone. Simon froze. Why? The day you took her to the hospital. I knew. So I ended it. I didn't want my child to grow up knowing that when their mother was sick, their father was by someone else's side. Why did you lie to me? Because I no longer believed you loved me. Because I wasn't sure you would ever wake up and give me what I deserved. Because I didn't think you would be this kind to me. I don't believe in you anymore. In the rearview mirror, Simon stood there for a long time, watching me go. His figure grew smaller and smaller, until it disappeared completely. The first thing I did when I returned to the office was fire Simon. He didn't protest. What I didn't expect was that, a week later, Miranda came looking for me. I thought she had rekindled things with Simon after our divorce and was here to flaunt it. But instead, she knelt before me, clutching her child. I can't reach him. Debt collectors are at my door. I don't know what else to do. I'm divorced from Simon. I don't know about his affairs. Miranda stiffened, quickly adjusting her expression. I never wanted to come between you two. I don't care what happens to me, I don't need a title. But my child, he's innocent. Director Song only pitted me. My parents divorced when I was young. And I. All these years. And she hadn't changed. Back in college, Miranda had a wealthy new boyfriend. Even when she skipped classes. Even when news of her family's scams spread. Nothing ever stopped her from being honored as a top student. What do you want me to do? I asked, smiling coldly. It wasn't me who ruined their family. Dressed head to toe in designer brands, Miranda had once stood on stage, tears welling in her eyes as she spoke on behalf of the students. Who gets to choose the family they're born into? She was always so innocent. Always so fragile. Always so adept at playing the victim. Cheating was because she felt insecure. Being a mistress was because she was forced to survive 20 years of luxury as a pampered princess, and yet she bore no guilt. Because the ones who did wrong were her parents. Her husband. She was just an innocent bystander, merely enjoying the spoils of their sins. My parents divorced after being scammed by your family. I cut her off. I was the same age as you back then. I took out student loans, worked like hell, and paid off every penny by my second year after graduation. She stiffened, struggled to remember, but couldn't even recall who I was. That was something our parents did. She finally whispered. I had no idea. She glanced at me carefully, realizing I wasn't interested in old grudges. I never meant to ruin your marriage. It's just that my child, he keeps crying for his dad. Simon loves children. No need to pretend. I cut in. The first time you met me, you already knew my name was Lara. Who taught your son to call Simon a dad? And who taught him to call me a mistress? I didn't have time for this pointless game. If you want Simon, then fight for him. But not against me. I've already thrown out my trash. I looked at her, calm and cold. While Simon and I were still married, he bought an apartment under your name. 2 million. I know about it. You have 1 month, pay it back. Or I'll see you in court. I know you've kept your record clean so far. I also know you're terrified of ending up like your father, spending your life as a fraud. By then, Miranda's face had turned ghostly pale. The little boy clung to her, looking at me in confusion. For a moment, I thought of the child who had once been inside me. I had considered keeping him. But I knew myself too well. I was starved for love, I would have been weak. I would have forgiven a man I vowed never to forgive. I had hoped, foolishly, that maybe having a child would make Simon change. That he would never hurt me again. But I had never been lucky. I knew better than to bet that I would be the exception to 1,000 heartbreaks. There were always flowers delivered to my office. No note. No signature. But I knew they were from Simon. I thought that without me in the way, he and Miranda would be able to rekindle their past love. After all, Simon had good prospects. Even after being dismissed, he received a generous severance package. With his resume, Finding another well-paying job would be easy. And Miranda, despite having a child, she had been raised in comfort for years. With her delicate charm, it shouldn't be too difficult for her to find someone new to rely on. Life is never like a novel, where cheaters and homewreckers suffer instant karma and ruin. People still chase their ambitions, each carving their own path forward. The weather had warmed. It was already May. I left the office at 6 in the evening. The sunset bathed the city in golden hues. Simon had been waiting under the street lamp for a long time. He held a bouquet of pink roses, his face thinner than before. The light blue shirt he used to wear often now looked a little loose on him. He looked just like the 19-year-old Simon who used to wait for me outside the library, insisting on walking me back to my dorm even though it was barely 60 meters away. Happy birthday. I had almost forgotten it was my birthday today. Thank you. I accepted the flowers, already thinking about how to reject him. I'll just walk with you for a bit. I won't bother you. Simon had always been perceptive. With just one glance, he could tell what I was thinking. As dusk settled, the streets were filled with hurried pedestrians and quiet couples walking side by side. Laura, do you still hate me? Halfway through, he couldn't hold back any longer. He didn't understand that the opposite of love was never hate, it was indifference. Love and hate both meant you still cared, but indifference meant you didn't. I don't hate you. You might not believe me, but I never crossed that line. My feelings for you haven't changed in 6 years. He was still desperate to prove his love. But you don't know there was already a history between Miranda and me. I never told you because I didn't want to put you in a difficult position. Back when you were pursuing me, people mocked me. They said I was treasuring something Miranda had discarded. But you know me. Once I make up my mind, no one can change it. Back then, I only thought you were amazing. Simon fell silent. I had never told him about Miranda's past, nor about the rumors that followed me for years. Even now, when I look back, all I remember are the good things about you. I remember how you stood up for me, the roses blooming on that island, how you gave me Empresa W and your promises. Even though we ended up like this, I never doubted that. In the moment you made those promises, you were sincere. Simon's eyes turned red as the city lights flickered on, the air filled with the clatter of pots and dishes from nearby homes, carrying the scent of warm dinners. I saw a young couple holding their child's hands. The little boy was playful, insisting on hopping between tiles as he walked. If we hadn't separated, we'd be like that too, wouldn't we? A child between us, preparing dinner together. Yes. If we hadn't separated. This winter, there would have been a soft little baby in the stroller Simon had so carefully picked out, looking up at me and smiling. I stopped and looked at him. Simon. This is it. From now on, we walk our separate paths. I still remember what you said when you confessed to me for the last time. That fate is like a rushing river if you don't hold on tightly. The next second, she'll disappear into the crowd, never to be seen again. I wasn't naive. I always knew Miranda had ulterior motives. I wasn't blind to the ambiguity between you two. I simply chose to trust you to believe that you would hold on to my hand. But you didn't. Under the dim streetlight, Simon suddenly crouched down, lowering his head. I couldn't see his expression. Maybe he was crying. The waves of the crowd passed by, slowly swallowing his figure. The man who once swore he would never let go of my hand had long since drifted away. Saying I had no regrets would be a lie. But regret is still better than despair. If wholeness was never meant to be, then better to turn back from the sea of suffering and find clarity in the parting. Simon's extra story. Before the divorce, Laura said. Simon vaguely sensed that something was off. Laura, usually independent but terrified of hospitals, had gone to her prenatal checkup alone. Laura, who loved sharing her daily life with him, hadn't messaged him in a month. But these were subtle details, almost imperceptible. So Simon chose to ignore them. Laura was a sensitive and reserved person. Perhaps it was because her parents always argued. She had learned from a young age to observe and interpret emotions. Love and indifference, she sensed them more keenly than others. She was tolerant of pain. No matter how sad she was. She rarely shed tears. After all the years together, Simon had only seen her cry once. That was when he played the hero. And ended up hospitalized after a fight. Unlike Miranda, who was delicate and emotional, whose tears and smiles came easily, making men soften effortlessly. At 19, Simon couldn't imagine that there were girls like Lara in this world. Because at 19, Simon was a freshman in college, arrogant and flamboyant, convinced that his family's money could pave the way for everything, from boldly chasing Miranda to investing in his roommate's gaming dream. He lived recklessly. Miranda was his first love. She was a spoiled princess with many little tempers. Though willful, Simon didn't mind coaxing her. It only cost money and effort. Like snowflakes, he threw his cash around. With persistence and relentless pursuit, he always won a sweet kiss in return. Simon once believed that love was meant to be this dramatic, until his family went bankrupt, and Miranda kicked him aside without hesitation. The first time Simon noticed Lara was when everyone else was staring at him, curious about the fallen rich boy. But she never looked at him. Old jeans, a t-shirt that didn't quite fit at the collar, and a canvas bag from the university. In the quiet hours of the barbecue stall, she would read in silence. The dining table she wiped down was spotless, almost like a study desk. Simon watched her for days. During her free moments, she read. She collected discarded bottles for an old scavenger woman. When classmates came to eat, she greeted them warmly, without reservation. Her name was Lara. It suited her. Simon couldn't say he liked her not the way he had felt about Miranda, with that burning desire to conquer. But if she was there, handing him a takeaway meal, his day seemed a little brighter. What a great girl. If only she smiled more. Then came the day she was bullied. Even when terrified, she stood her ground stubbornly, refusing to show weakness. Simon told himself, don't make trouble. Just get through college. But then she looked at him. And with that one glance, his hands acted on their own. This girl was strange. She didn't cry when others picked on her. She didn't cry when scolded by a faculty member. But the moment she saw him smile, she burst into tears. Simon felt like something in his heart crumbled under the weight of her tears. He didn't want her to cry. That single thought led Simon to chase her for 2 years. She worked part-time at the library, and many guys pursued her. Simon once overheard one of them bad-mouthing him, saying he was unreliable, a troublemaker. Lara only replied politely, "The Simon I know isn't like that. Please don't speak ill of my friends in front of me." Gossip swirled like storms. But never once did Lara complain to Simon. Simon never knew that girls like Lara existed. Quiet and reserved. Cautious yet stubborn. She carried a heart full of roses for him, yet built walls so high that not a single one was easily given away. Her tuition came from student loans. She earned her own living expenses. She lived frugally but never applied for financial aid. Simon always thought she was just too proud. Why not ask her parents for help? Wouldn't life be easier? Why don't you ask them? Because even if I did, they wouldn't give me anything. It would only humiliate me. It was only years later that Simon understood why Lara never cried. Because crying required someone to comfort you. And Lara had no one. She was warm and kind to everyone. Yet it was nearly impossible to reach her true self. Simon once believed Lara was strong because she had her own way of dealing with the world. Much later, he realized she simply never expected anything from anyone. Simon knew that when Lara said, "I hope we can be together forever," it was a confession heavier than, "I love you." It meant that Lara had begun to hope for their future. When Miranda stood before him, Simon had to admit 8 years of resentment finally felt avenged. Lara wasn't at the office when Miranda returned the ring. She knelt in his office, hoping that he would remember their past. She said she regretted it, that she often dreamed about their time together. If Lara was a rose standing strong in the storm, then Miranda was a delicate parasitic vine. And for some foolish reason, Simon kept the ring. And kept Miranda. Simon thought Lara would be angry. But she said she trusted him. And somehow, His plan for revenge changed into something else entirely. The moment that little boy ran into his arms and called him Dad, Simon's heart skipped a beat. What if Lara and I had a child together? But Lara had already sensed that something was wrong. Simon panicked. He didn't want to lose Lara. So he fired Miranda, trying to distance himself. But the once proud and arrogant Miranda now humbled herself, begging him not to erase her completely. Then, one night, her child had a fever. In the car, Miranda leaned against him, crying like a fragile flower in the rain. At that moment, Simon admitted his vanity as a man. The need to be relied on was satisfied. But it was just vanity. He wasn't stupid enough to leave Lara for Miranda. It was like standing on the shore, testing the waters of another boat just to feel the thrill of it, until Lara got pregnant. Then, Simon wanted nothing more than to give her the world. So, at midnight, after one final phone call, he told Miranda it was over. He would never contact her again. But when he turned around, Lara was standing there, silently watching him. The moonlight pooled at her feet. It was December, and she wasn't even wearing slippers. She just looked at him. That look, Simon remembered it so clearly. It was the same as that night she had looked at him, silently pleading for him to help her. The same eyes, full of pleading, fragility, and sorrow, as if she was drowning. And with just that one look, Simon's heart clenched in pain. And he finally, completely sobered up. What had he done? He had almost destroyed their future. Simon deleted Miranda. He filled the nursery. Little by little, Lara sat on the couch, watching him with quiet tenderness. The more Simon thought about it, the more terrified he became. Lara, who had been with him through hardship. Lara, who had endured everything with him. He had almost let her down. She looked beautiful in dresses, reminding him of the past. Snow fell in City A. For the first time, Simon's first thought wasn't the humiliation of 19. It was waiting for her at the library, braving the snow to buy her a steaming plum blossom cake. But Lara said they should separate. Simon desperately searched her face for any sign of hesitation. Love, reluctance, disappointment, even hate. He would have accepted that. But there was nothing. The eyes that once held so much admiration and attachment for him were now indifferent. Suddenly, Simon remembered Lara never hated people. She only forgot them. 2 years ago, when they finally had financial stability, Lara's parents came looking for her. Simon, worried she would be upset, rushed to the office only to find her standing there, facing their angry accusations and insults. No tears, no rebuttals, just silent indifference. That same look, exactly like the one she gave him today. After Lara left, Simon tried to find a reason. She had gone to prenatal checkups alone while Miranda was already working beside him as his assistant. What had Lara been thinking while she sat there at the hospital, waiting for her results? Was she lonely? Was she scared? No more than anything. She must have been heartbroken. That's why she hadn't told him about the pregnancy right away. After she was gone, Simon wanted to make things right only to realize it had been 2 months since they had really talked. Her chat had been pushed lower and lower in his messages. The last text she sent, it was a photo of a cloud that looked like a puppy, taken on her way to work. And he never replied. What had he been doing then? Oh, he had been busy helping Miranda find an apartment. In the end, it was an app notification that reminded him. There was a cloud-stored video. The nursery's security footage. It was 2 a.m. Lara sat alone beside the crib. The night was freezing. Yet she only wore a nightdress. She was staring at his phone, watching the car's dashcam footage. The night he had rushed out. How his car had stopped in front of Miranda. How Miranda had gotten in. She sat there, playing the video over and over. She even zoomed in several times, as if desperately trying to convince herself that the driver wasn't him. When the screen dimmed, so did her eyes. She sat motionless for a long time, like a child caught doing something wrong. The cold wind blew against her, but she didn't seem to feel it. Only when her tears hit the carpet did she snap out of it. hurriedly wiping them away. But the more she wiped, the more they fell. Afraid of waking him, she lowered her head, muffling her sobs. Watching Lara sit there, blank and helpless, Simon felt his heart twist into a tight, agonizing knot. His throat felt like it was blocked by something sharp, making it impossible to breathe. The pain was unbearable. Simon had always thought that Lara bringing him back to a city, making him relive their love, and then telling him they should separate was all for revenge. That she wanted to lead him back to that floating island covered in roses, only to push him off mercilessly, shattering him into pieces. But he was wrong. The one she wanted to shatter was herself. Lara was far more resolute than he had imagined. Moving away wasn't just about leaving, it was about erasing the last remnants of their past. She left everything related to him behind. Lara, please at least give me a chance. For the sake of the child. The child is gone. Her tone was calm. Simon froze. The night I watched the video, I considered giving you a chance. If the video hadn't shown anything, I would have let myself believe a lie. Her child was sick. You were so worried. So I thought it shouldn't matter if our child was gone. She looked at him, her voice light, without a trace of resentment. After Lara left, Simon spent a long time thinking about how to make things right. Flowers flooded Empresa W's office like waves. He remembered the game he had once made for Lara. Just like back then when he figured out how to beat the final level, he now wanted to bring her roses and ask for another chance. She didn't reject the bouquet, and Simon thought that meant he still had hope. But the calmer she was, the more afraid he became. Lara had once told him that the opposite of love wasn't hate, it was indifference. She still spoke to him with warmth and grace. But Simon knew his 10,000 roses had already withered. When he mentioned the little boy from before, Lara cut him off, because she no longer imagined a future with him. The evening in May was warm, the wind gentle. It was beautiful weather. Yet Simon felt like he had been thrown back into that stormy night. She let go of his hand, leaving him alone in the vast sea of people. After 6 years, she rejected him for the 5th time. I trusted you. I thought you would hold on to my hand. But you didn't.